They dismissed him, they doubted him, and they made him feel small. But what they didn't know, his mother owned the very bank they tried to push him out of. 12-year-old Jaden Ellis stood at the entrance of Westbridge First National Bank, gripping a thick white envelope in his hands. He wasn't nervous. If anything, he felt excited. His mother, Monica Ellis, had finally let him handle something important on his own. It was a simple deposit, just some birthday money and allowance he had saved up. But to him, it felt like a step into responsibility, a small but meaningful moment. He adjusted his hoodie and walked in. The cool, air-conditioned space was a sharp contrast to the warmth outside. The bank was sleek, all marble floors and glass partitions, the kind of place where people spoke in hushed tones. Business types in pressed suits stood at the counters, a few older couples filled out forms at a side table, and tellers in crisp uniforms moved with mechanical efficiency. Jaden took his place in line, his sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The wait wasn't long. When it was his turn, he stepped up to the counter where a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair and thin-rimmed glasses sat behind the glass. Her name tag read Margaret Downs. She barely glanced at him. "Next," she called, sounding bored. Jaden smiled politely and placed his envelope on the counter. "Hi, I want to deposit this into my account." Margaret's eyes flicked from the envelope to him. For the first time, she actually looked at him. Her expression shifted slightly, lips tightening, brows pulling together just enough to show she was already making an assumption. She didn't reach for the envelope. Instead, she leaned back slightly in her chair. "Where did you get this money?" Jaden blinked. My mom gave me the account to put it in." Margaret exhaled sharply through her nose. "That's not what I asked." There was a pause, the kind that stretches too long and makes the air feel heavier. Jaden shifted on his feet, thrown off by her tone. "My birthday. And does your mother know you're here?" she cut in. "Or are you just walking in with cash?" The envelope still sat between them, untouched. Jaden's excitement had begun to fade. "Yes, she knows," he said, more cautious now. Margaret looked at him like she wasn't convinced. Instead of proceeding, she glanced over at a man standing near the offices in the back. Brandon Calloway, senior banker, suit pressed to perfection, wristwatch gleaming under the lights. He had been talking to another employee, but at Margaret's subtle signal, he looked over. Jaden saw the moment Calloway's gaze landed on him, the way his expression changed. Calloway walked over, his polished shoes making sharp clicks on the tile. "Is there a problem?" Margaret lifted her chin. "This young man says he wants to make a deposit." Calloway studied Jaden, then the envelope, and then Jaden again. There was something in his eyes. Not curiosity, something else. He crossed his arms. "How much are we talking about here?" Jaden hesitated. About 500. A small, sharp breath from Margaret. Calloway's lips pressed together. "That's a lot of money for a kid," Calloway said. Jaden frowned. "It's my money. Do you have ID?" Jaden shook his head. "No, but I have the account number." He pushed the envelope forward slightly, hoping that would be enough. Calloway didn't take it. "We don't handle unverified deposits from kids off the street," he said, voice calm but pointed. "Where's your parent or guardian?" Jaden felt heat rise in his chest. "I told you, my mom knows I'm here. She told me I could do this." But Margaret was already shaking her head. "I'm sorry, but we can't process this without verification." A few people in line were watching now. A man in a navy suit glanced over. A woman near the ATM slowed her typing. Jaden felt small, like he wasn't supposed to be here. But before he could argue, the doors behind him swung open. The doors to Westbridge First National Bank swung open, letting in a rush of warm air from the street. Jaden didn't turn around. His focus was still on the two bank employees standing in front of him, blocking what should have been a simple transaction. Margaret tapped her fingers against the counter, her expression unreadable. Calloway, standing beside her, let out a quiet sigh, as if dealing with Jaden was a waste of his time. "You need an adult present," Calloway said again, slower this time, like Jaden wasn't understanding. Jaden felt the weight of every pair of eyes on him. The man in the suit near the counter, the older woman filling out a check, even the security guard near the entrance had turned slightly, watching. "I have an account," Jaden said, trying to keep his voice steady. "My mom set it up for me." "That's not the issue," Margaret replied, giving him a look that made his stomach twist. "The issue is where this money came from." Jaden felt something in him snap. "I already told you. My birthday and saving up." "It's mine." Calloway exchanged a glance with Margaret. He adjusted his tie. Listen, kid. We have rules here. If we let anyone just walk in and dump cash into an account, you know how many problems that could cause. Jaden's fists clenched. But I'm not just anyone. I have the account number. Just check it. Margaret sighed, looking past Jaden toward the line forming behind him. She was losing patience, and now people were waiting. You're holding up business, she said flatly. Jaden felt heat creeping up his neck. He wasn't trying to make a scene. He wasn't trying to bother anyone. He just wanted to do what his mom had told him to do. Calloway motioned toward the security guard, a tall man with a badge that read D. Reynolds. He had been standing by the entrance, mostly indifferent. Until now. Mr. Reynolds, Calloway called, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Would you mind helping this young man outside while he sorts this out with his parents? Jaden's stomach dropped. The security guard hesitated. He didn't seem thrilled about the request, but Calloway was a senior banker. And Reynolds didn't work for the customers, he worked for the bank. Jaden shook his head. You can't do that. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm sorry, but we can't accept this. Transaction, Margaret said, pushing the envelope back toward him like it was something dirty. Jaden felt his face burn. The looks, the murmurs, the way Calloway and Margaret stood there, waiting for him to take the money and leave. And then a voice cut through the tension. What exactly is going on here? It was strong, sharp, controlled, the type of voice that made people stop mid-sentence. Margaret's expression shifted instantly. Calloway's head snapped toward the entrance. The security guard, who had started moving toward Jaden, froze in place. Jaden turned. His mother stood there. Monica Ellis. She wasn't rushing, wasn't panicked. She was calm, too calm. Dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, heels clicking lightly against the marble, she walked forward with the kind of presence that made people step aside without thinking. Jaden had never been so relieved to see her. Monica's eyes moved from Jaden to the envelope on the counter, then to the faces of the employees standing in front of him. Her expression was unreadable, but something about it made Margaret straighten in her chair and made Calloway shift slightly where he stood. Monica stopped beside her son and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I asked a question, she said, looking directly at Calloway now. What's going on? Silence. Margaret opened her mouth, but Calloway spoke first. Mrs. Ellis, this young man was trying to deposit cash into an account, but we have certain policies. Monica tilted her head slightly. And what policy exactly says a child cannot deposit his own money into his own account? Margaret cleared her throat. Well, we have to verify where large sums of money come from, and… Monica didn't blink. $500 is not a large sum of money. Calloway looked like he wanted to argue, but he hesitated. Monica turned to her son. Jaden, did you give them the account number? He nodded. Yes, but they wouldn't check it. Monica exhaled slowly, shaking her head. Then she turned back to Margaret. I assume you have access to the system? Margaret swallowed. Yes, but… Monica didn't raise her voice, but somehow, it still cut through the air like a knife. Then check the account. Margaret hesitated for half a second too long, then reluctantly turned to her computer, her fingers moving stiffly over the keyboard. The entire bank was silent now. But things were far from over. Margaret's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her reluctance obvious. She had no choice now. With a sharp inhale, she started typing, her neatly trimmed nails clicking against the keys. Jaden stayed still, his mother's steady hand on his shoulder. He could feel the tension thick in the air. His mother wasn't yelling, wasn't making a scene, but somehow, that made everything feel heavier. Calloway shifted, his lips pressing together as he stole a glance at the bank manager's office. His confidence from earlier had faded. Margaret cleared her throat, her voice suddenly quieter than before. What's the name on the account? Monica's eyes didn't waver. Jaden Ellis. Margaret typed it in, eyes scanning the screen, her mouth pressed into a thin line. She squinted, like she didn't believe what she was seeing. Then her posture stiffened. Calloway leaned over the counter slightly, trying to peek at the screen. What is it? Margaret's jaw clenched before she answered. The account is active. Jaden felt a rush of relief. See? I told you. Margaret said nothing. Calloway's fingers tapped impatiently against the counter. And the funds? Margaret hesitated. There's a substantial balance. Calloway's brows pulled together. Define substantial. Margaret swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. 7 figures. A single breath passed before the weight of her words sank in. $1 million account. Calloway's eyes widened. A hush rippled through the small crowd that had been watching. The man in the suit near the counter turned fully toward them now. The woman at the ATM had stopped pretending to type. Even the security guard shifted uncomfortably, like he wished he could be anywhere else. Jaden looked at his mother. He had no idea their account had that much money. He knew his mom was successful, but hearing it out loud like this. Margaret's lips parted slightly, like she was searching for a way to fix what she had just done. Calloway's face paled, but he wasn't ready to back down yet. Well, policies still require. Monica didn't let him finish. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said, her voice crisp. My son, whose name is on the account, provided you with the correct information and was refused service because… What, exactly? Margaret shrank slightly. We just needed to verify. Verify what? Monica cut in. That he belonged here? That the money was actually his? That he was worthy of being treated like a customer? Calloway exhaled sharply through his nose. Mrs. Ellis, we follow standard security measures for unaccompanied minors handling large transactions. Surely you understand the risk. Monica let out a short, humorless chuckle. Risk? She tilted her head. He wasn't withdrawing. He wasn't asking for a loan. He was depositing his own money. What exactly did you think he was going to do? Commit fraud? Launder $500? Margaret's cheeks flushed. She quickly looked away, as if hoping the screen in front of her could swallow her whole. Monica stepped closer, her voice controlled but sharp. The real risk here, Mr. Calloway, is that your bank just humiliated a child because you assumed he didn't belong. And now you're standing here, scrambling for an excuse. Calloway's nostrils flared, his composure slipping. Mrs. Ellis, I assure you, there was no ill intent. No. Monica's voice was almost too soft now. Then why was my son spoken to like a criminal? Why was security called? Calloway's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. He had no answer. Jaden's fingers tightened around the envelope. His chest still burned from the embarrassment, but now, watching his mother take control, he felt something else creeping in. Something close to vindication. Margaret let out a nervous breath. I can process the deposit now. Monica smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Don't bother. Margaret blinked. Excuse me? Monica reached into her handbag and pulled out a neatly folded document. Because as of this morning, she said, unfolding the papers with a practiced ease, this branch no longer belongs to Westbridge First National Bank. The blood drained from Margaret's face. Calloway's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Monica let the pause stretch long enough for. The weight of her words settled in, then she finished. It belongs to me. And that's when the real fallout began. Silent. The kind that didn't just fill a room. It swallowed it whole. Margaret's fingers twitched near her keyboard like she wanted to disappear behind the monitor. Calloway's jaw flexed, his once steady composure shattered. Even the security guard, who had been edging closer earlier, took a half step back. Monica let the moment breathe, let them feel the weight of what just happened. She placed the official documents flat on the counter, tapping them lightly with one manicured nail. This morning, I finalized the acquisition of 4 Westbridge branches, including this one. Which means, she tilted her head slightly, eyes locking onto Calloway. I own this bank. Jaden exhaled, the tension in his chest shifting from humiliation to quiet satisfaction. He hadn't seen this coming, but the reaction on their faces made it all worth it. Margaret was the first to break. She scrambled to regain footing, her voice uneven. Mrs. Ellis, I had no idea. Monica raised a hand, silencing her with nothing more than a look. You didn't need to know. Her tone was smooth, measured. You just needed to do your job. But instead, you saw a boy, a black boy, and decided he couldn't possibly belong here. Margaret's face flushed. It wasn't about. Don't, Monica cut in, her voice sharper now. Don't insult me by pretending this was standard procedure. Calloway's lips pressed into a tight line. Mrs. Ellis, he started, trying to recover. I assure you, we hold all our customers to the same policies. Monica's eyebrow lifted. Do you? She glanced around, her gaze sweeping over the people still lingering, watching, witnessing. Tell me, Mr. Calloway, if a different 12-year-old had walked in, a boy in pressed khakis and boat shoes, or maybe a little girl in a sundress with her mother's pearls, would they have been grilled like this? Would they have been treated like a security threat? Calloway shifted his weight, but no words came out. Monica nodded slightly, as if she'd expected that. Then she turned to Margaret. And you, she said, her voice deceptively calm. How many children have you questioned like that? How many others have you humiliated at this counter? Margaret's face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I'll tell you what's going to happen now, Monica continued, sliding the documents closer. There are going to be some changes in this branch. Calloway bristled. With all due respect, Mrs. Ellis, I've been with this institution for over 15 years. If you think you can just… Monica leaned forward slightly. I can. And I will. Calloway's jaw locked. For the first time, his carefully constructed authority had crumbled. Monica turned back to Margaret. You. Take your lunch break. A long one. Margaret swallowed hard, glancing at Calloway like he might save her. But Calloway wasn't looking at her anymore. His gaze was fixed on Monica, tension lacing his posture. And as for you… Monica turned to Calloway, her tone cooling even further. Clean out your desk. Calloway stiffened. You can't be serious. Monica's stare didn't waver. You escalated a situation that never needed to be a situation in the first place. You humiliated a child. You assumed. You judged. She inhaled slowly, then let out a sharp exhale. And now you're unemployed. Calloway's face darkened. He turned to the bank manager's office, where an older man in a navy suit had been standing silently, watching everything unfold. Mr. Lowe, Calloway called, searching for backup. But the bank manager, Richard Lowe, gave him nothing. Lowe was no fool. He wasn't about to challenge the woman who now owned the bank. Calloway let out a slow, shaky breath, his shoulders deflating. He didn't argue. He just nodded stiffly and turned toward his office, his movements robotic. Margaret, still frozen in place, took a step back. Should I? Take your break, Monica repeated, but there was no kindness in it. Margaret gave a quick, jerky nod and all but fled from behind the counter. The energy in the bank shifted instantly. The employees, who had been silent, started moving again, but slower, more careful. The customers, who had been eavesdropping, turned back to their business, pretending they hadn't just witnessed a reckoning. Jayden still hadn't moved. He was still holding the envelope, still standing there, absorbing it all. Monica finally turned back to him, the fire in her eyes softened. Go ahead, baby, she said gently. Deposit your money. A new teller, a younger man, nervous but professional, hurried over to the counter. I'll take care of that for you, he said quickly, his voice steady despite the tension lingering in the air. Jayden stepped forward. He didn't look at Calloway, didn't look at Margaret. He just slid the envelope over and watched as the teller did his job. But this wasn't over yet. The teller, his name tag read Eric Vasquez, worked quickly. His fingers tapped over the keyboard. His hands weren't as steady as they should have been, but he wasn't about to make the same mistake as his co-workers. Jayden watched him count the money carefully, verify the deposit, and input the account details without hesitation. There was no questioning, no unnecessary scrutiny. Just business being handled the way it should have been from the start. Your deposit is complete, Eric said, sliding the receipt across the counter with a forced but polite smile. Jayden took it. He wasn't sure if he should say thank you. It wasn't like they were doing him a favor. They were just doing what they should have done the moment he walked in. Monica took the receipt from his hand, glanced at it, and slipped it into her purse. Then, slowly, she turned back to face the room. Richard Lowe, the branch manager, stepped forward at last. He had been silent the entire time, watching from the sidelines. But now, he cleared his throat as if preparing to salvage the situation. Mrs. Ellis, Lowe started, adjusting his suit jacket. On behalf of the bank, I'd like to extend my sincerest apologies for this unfortunate incident. Monica didn't respond right away. She just gave him a slow, measured look, letting the discomfort stretch. Unfortunate, she repeated. That's an interesting word choice. Lowe hesitated, the sweat already visible at his temple. I assure you, we take matters like this very seriously. This does not reflect the standards we uphold here. At Westbridge, Monica let out a short laugh, shaking her head. That's exactly the problem, Mr. Lowe. She gestured toward Calloway, who was still stiffly packing up his belongings, his face unreadable. Because it does reflect your standards. That's why no one stopped it. That's why the security guard was called instead of someone just checking the account. Lowe glanced at Calloway, then Margaret, who was still nowhere to be seen, and had the nerve to look embarrassed. We can, Lowe started, but Monica held up a hand. Save it. She exhaled through her nose, steady and controlled. I don't need lip service. What I need is for this bank to operate differently, starting now. Lowe nodded quickly. Of course. Here's what's going to happen, Monica continued, shifting the weight of her bag on her arm. I'm bringing in an entirely new corporate oversight team to evaluate not just this branch, but every branch under my ownership. And I will be personally reviewing employee files, customer complaints, and… She tilted her head, letting her gaze land on Calloway one last time. Patterns. Calloway's shoulders tensed. He didn't say a word. He didn't dare. Lowe swallowed hard. Understood. Monica turned toward Eric Vasquez, the only teller who had stepped in to help. How long have you been here? Eric straightened up. 6 months, ma'am. You handled my son's transaction professionally. Eric blinked. I was just doing my job. Monica nodded. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. And yet, here we are. Lowe cleared his throat again, desperate to regain control of the moment. I assure you, we will work to make the necessary adjustments. I'm not asking, Monica cut in smoothly. Lowe pressed his lips together, nodding stiffly. He understood. Jaden, still standing by his mother's side, watched everything unfold with quiet awe. He had seen his mother in business mode before, had heard her on calls, watched her run meetings. But never like this. Never where the subject was him. He felt taller. Not just because his mom had shut them down, but because she had proved what he already knew deep down. He belonged here. Monica let the weight of her words settle before turning back to Jaden. We're done here, she said, her voice calm but final. Jaden nodded, his grip tightening around the folded receipt in his hand as they turned toward the exit. Monica glanced back one last time. One more thing, she said, eyes locking on Lowe. If I ever hear about something like this happening again at any of my branches, West Bridge won't just have lost one senior banker. Lowe swallowed hard. Understood, ma'am. She didn't wait for a response. And with that, she and Jaden walked out through the front doors. Jaden stepped outside, blinking against the late afternoon sun. The warmth felt different now, like something heavy had been lifted from his chest. He glanced up at his mother, expecting her to still be in business mode, but she was already softening. She pulled her sunglasses from her bag, slipping them on like nothing had happened. Hungry? She asked casually. Jaden hesitated. It was such a normal question after what had just happened. Yeah. Monica smiled. Good. Let's get something before we head home. They walked toward her car, but Jaden's mind was still back in the bank. The way the teller had looked at him. The way Calloway had dismissed him. The way everyone had been so sure that a kid like him couldn't possibly have money to deposit. He should have been angry. And he was. But more than that, he felt seen. His mother had made sure of that. Jaden opened the passenger door, sliding in as Monica started the engine. As she pulled onto the street, he finally spoke. They didn't think I belonged there. Monica didn't react right away. She just kept driving, like she had been waiting for him to say it. No, she said finally. They didn't. Jaden frowned, his fingers running over the folded receipt in his pocket. I don't get it. It's just a bank. Monica sighed, tapping her fingers lightly against the steering wheel. It's never just a bank. Or just a school. Or just a store. People carry their assumptions with them. They don't even have to think about it. It's just there. And sometimes that means people like you have to prove you belong. Jaden stared out the window. That's not fair. Monica let out a dry chuckle. No, baby. It's not. They drove in silence for a moment before she glanced over at him. But here's the thing. You don't need anyone to validate you. You don't need permission to take up space. Jaden turned toward her. But they made me feel like I did. Monica nodded slowly. And they'll do it again. And again. That's why you never shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. Jaden sat with that. Monica gave him a sideways glance. You held yourself together in there. He shrugged. I didn't feel like it. That doesn't matter. You didn't yell. You didn't panic. You stood your ground. And you let them expose themselves. Jaden smirked slightly. You kinda did that part for me. Monica grinned. Oh, no doubt. But next time, you might have to handle it yourself. So you better be ready. Jaden leaned his head against the window, letting out a long breath. I still don't get how you own the bank and didn't tell me. Monica laughed. Because it wasn't important. She paused. Until it was. Jaden let that sink in. They pulled into a small diner. One of those places with neon signs flickering in the window. Monica put the car in park and turned toward him. You're going to deal with people like that your whole life, she said. And when you do, you have two choices. You can let it define you, or you can remind them who you are. Jaden met her eyes. Like you did. Monica smiled. Exactly. He thought about that as they got out of the car, walking toward the entrance. For the first time that day, he felt taller. Judgment is easy. Assumptions are easier. But power comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let anyone take that from you. Always carry yourself with confidence, even when the world doubts you. And when someone questions your place in a room, make sure they remember your name when you leave. If this story resonated with you, share it. Let's start conversations that matter. And remember, your worth isn't up for debate.